Hey, it's Jennifer, and today I have a video for you that is actually the most requested video I get, and that is a closer look at how I store my embossing powders. I've shown in videos, you've seen it in action, but I wanted to just put it all in one place. I have 3 different systems that I'm going to recommend. Maybe one works for you. One involves small containers with little spoons for some of the powders I reach for often. Another is a larger container with a larger spoon for my most used powders. And then for my less used powders, a way of storing it so that you can see what the embossed color really looks like. So let's go ahead and dive in. For my favorite powders, the ones that I seem to use quite often, like my silvers and my golds, I have these small containers. These are actually the same containers I use for my kids' lunches. I just love this design. You could use any small containers that you can find. I'll have links to these in my YouTube description below and over on my blog. These are the small containers. Now what I do with these is I actually have a mini spoon, which you could get at an ice cream shop when you take a sample, or I'll link to where you can buy them. A little mini spoon hooked onto the lid so that I can easily get the spoon out and then scoop the powder onto my project. Now I have found 3 things that you can use to clip your mini spoon onto the inside lid of your embossing container so that it doesn't get into the powder. This is the original one that I found. It's a cable clip, and I will link to this below and over my blog. Sometimes these are out of stock, so I started looking for other options. Now you can find some of these at your office supply store, but I know a lot of people like to shop online. So here are some other options. That one works great, by the way. I just wanted to show you other options in case you can't find them. This is a clear clip that's pretty similar, but it holds the spoon in just the same way. You can either put the spoon in right under the clip area and it kind of holds it there, or you can push it in farther and it's kind of loose in there. It really depends. It doesn't fall out of here because the container is so small. But these big containers are great for also holding the large spoon, which you'll see a little bit later. Okay, so this is a second option, and I will link to this larger clear clip. And the last option is this smaller clear clip. And this one really is working, and this is actually what I'm using on my future containers. It's a super tiny one for holding, I think it's supposed to be for holding like small pictures or holding Christmas lights in place or something. And look at how the little mini spoon just pops in place. So this is a great option. Any of them work perfectly fine. So whatever you can find or whatever you can order will work great. And I like having my spoon in this so I don't have to dig it out of the powder every time I need it. And also I like to have an individual spoon for each container so that I don't mix powders accidentally. So I have some of my favorite powders in here, not my clear and my white, but all my other favorites, ones that I was finding myself reaching for a lot. I went ahead and switched over to these containers. I love them because they're still small and they stack very nicely. They fit great in my little narrow Alex IKEA drawers, which is what I store my embossing powders in. So I'm really happy with these containers, and again, they're great for dry food storage for your kids' lunches too. Now for my clear and white powders, which I use by far the most, I like to keep them in a bigger container. I actually get several jars of each of the powders, maybe 3 or 4, and I pour them all in a container together so I can easily scoop up a bunch of the powder and go. So you can see this container is the same brand, it's the same kind of design, but it's just bigger. And they actually still stack nicely with the smaller containers too. I actually keep these larger containers on their side in a drawer so that I can quickly grab them and go. Now I use the larger clips to hold a larger spoon on the inside lid of this container. I just love that I don't have to dig into the powder to grab the spoon like I used to have to do. This container is great because it seals nice and tight and it's easy to quickly open, but you could use any container that you may already have. But this is bigger than a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, so I can easily just pour a ton on a background and I'm ready to go. By the way, for clear and white embossing powders, I really like the Hero Arts brand, so that's what you see here. Now, I do also put labels on these containers so that there's no confusion about what I'm grabbing. It's just easy because I'm taking them out of the container jar, so I want to make sure it's labeled. So I use my label maker and I just put the little sticker right on the top. I'll put a link here to a video where I show the label maker that I like and how to make it not waste as much label like some label makers do. Okay, now for the other powders. I have a lot of colored powders that I really like, but I just don't reach from enough to warrant, paying money to get a container. So this is what I do. I have them all in my drawer, upside down, just so I can see the color a bit better. And I went ahead and I embossed the powder that's in the container on a small circle. This is like maybe a 5/8 of an inch circle punch. And I covered it with Versamark ink and then covered it with the powder and heated it. Then I used a mini glue dot to glue it to the bottom of the jar. Now you could glue it to the top of the jar and keep them upright if you wanted to. But this way I can see what the powder looks like when it's embossed, because sometimes the powder in the jars don't really look like the final results. Here you can see a lot of the Wow embossing powders that I have. I really like that brand because it's very inexpensive. I also really love the Ranger embossing powders, super high quality. And Judikin's embossing powders are good, and a lot of people have luck with the American Crafts Zing embossing powders. So this is what I do with my regular colors. I just punch a circle of the embossed color and stick it to the bottom. Since I took the time to put these little embossed samples on each jar, I found that I'm using my colored embossing powders much more. It really has helped me out to have a quick reference right there. Now, one trick that I found really saved a lot of time is I actually just took white cardstock and I smushed the Versamark ink pad right onto the cardstock and then added the embossing powder. I heat it and then I punched the circle. That is so much faster than trying to put Versamark ink and embossing powder on an already punched circle. So that's just a little tip to make this faster. I found this really helped me out, and maybe it'll help you out too. Now, when using these individual jars that I don't have in containers, I wanted to find a way to still be tidy, and I decided to start working over coffee filters, which I guess people have been doing for years. I'd somehow missed that boat, but I found it works for me, and I guess it's working for lots of people. So I have these coffee filters, and this is so much better than working over scrap paper because it's like you're working in a bowl, so the powder doesn't want to go flying off the edge like you have with scrap paper. And if you're in the middle of a project, you can kind of pick up the filter and move it aside without having to worry about it going everywhere. I just keep a mini spoon on hand where I can pour the powder over my project. And then when I'm done, I just take the coffee filter, kind of fold it a little bit, and then just pour the excess powder back in. Now you can take this coffee filter, crumble it up, and throw it away, or you can reuse it, which I do a lot. I just take the coffee filter after I've tapped most of the excess back into the jar. I take the coffee filter over to my trash can, tap off the extra, and I'm good to go to use the coffee filter again. This has really saved me a lot of time. So there you have it, my tricks for storing embossing powder. There's 3 different options, and hopefully one of them will work well for you. Now again, I mentioned many different products here, different containers and clips and such. I link to all of them below in my YouTube description, and also you can head over to my blog where I'll have more pictures, so it's really clear which product I'm linking to. So be sure to click on over to my blog to see more information. I appreciate you watching. If this was helpful, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube knows you want to see more from me, and I hope to see you again soon.